wanted to celebrate my retirement with my son and my daughter-in-law. During the toast, a waiter whispered, "Don't drink. I saw her tampering with your glass." I held the cup without tasting it. Half an hour later, they understood the price of my calm.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. From the moment I should have seen what was coming. The sapphire brooch sat in its velvet box on my dresser, catching the morning light the way it had for 42 years. Robert gave it to me on our 10th anniversary. Back then, he was still a resident at Mercy Hospital, working doubles to support us while I juggled nursing school and taking care of baby Brian. The brooch cost more than our rent that month. I told him he was crazy for spending that much. He kissed my forehead and said some things were worth being crazy for. Robert died 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer took him in 4 months. The brooch was one of the few things that still made me feel close to him. Stephanie, my daughter-in-law, mentioned it again last Tuesday when she stopped by unannounced. She does that now, just walks in like she owns the place. Brian gave her a key 6 months ago without asking me first. "That brooch would look stunning with my navy dress," she said, standing in my bedroom doorway. She wasn't asking. She was stating a fact, like she'd already decided it would be hers eventually. The color would really bring out my eyes. Don't you think, Susan? I was folding laundry on my bed. My hand stopped mid-fold on one of Robert's old undershirts that I still couldn't throw away. It was Robert's gift to me. "Oh, I know." She walked closer, picked up the box without permission, opened it. The afternoon sun hit the stones and scattered blue light across her face. "It's just such a shame to keep it locked away. Robert would want someone to enjoy it, wouldn't he?" The way she said Robert's name, like she had any right to speak for him, made something cold settle in my chest. But I didn't say anything. I never did with Stephanie. 5 years she'd been married to Brian, and I'd learned that disagreeing with her wasn't worth the aftermath. She'd pout to Brian. He'd call me later saying I'd hurt her feelings, asking why I couldn't just be more flexible. "Maybe someday," I said, taking the box from her hands and placing it back on the dresser. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. Someday." She checked her phone. "Brian's waiting in the car. We just wanted to confirm Saturday. You're still okay with Giovanni's for your retirement dinner, right? 6 o'clock? That's fine. Perfect. And Susan?" She paused at the bedroom door. "Maybe wear something nice. Brian invited some of his colleagues. First impressions matter." After she left, I sat on my bed holding the brooch box. First impressions. As if after 40 years as a nurse, after raising a son alone while Robert worked himself to exhaustion, after surviving widowhood and chemotherapy watch and 2 years of learning to live in a silent house, I didn't know how to present myself. But that's how Stephanie operated. Small comments that lodged under your skin like splinters. Nothing you could point to and say, "That was cruel." Just enough to make you doubt yourself. It started about a year ago, right after Robert died and the will was read. Brian inherited the house in Portland that Robert grew up in, the one his parents left him. It needed work, but it was worth something. I inherited everything else. This house, the savings, Robert's life insurance, his retirement accounts. It wasn't a fortune, but it was comfortable. Robert had been careful with money. That's when Stephanie's visits became more frequent, and her observations more pointed. "You seem tired, Susan. Are you sleeping okay? Did you forget we had plans last week? You said you'd come for dinner." "Brian's worried about you driving. You seemed confused about the directions to our place last month." None of it was true. I slept fine. We'd never made dinner plans. I knew exactly how to get to their house. But Stephanie said these things in front of Brian, and I could see doubt creeping into my son's eyes. The way he'd started treating me more carefully, like I was fragile, like I was failing. 3 months ago, Stephanie suggested I might want to downsize. "This house is so much for one person," she said, running her finger along my kitchen counter like she was checking for dust. "All these stairs. What if you fell? Brian worries about you here alone. I've lived here for 35 years. Exactly. Don't you think it's time for something easier? There's a lovely senior community near us. They have activities, meal plans. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." I looked at her standing in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals, where Brian had done his homework at that table, where Robert and I had shared our last cup of coffee together before the diagnosis. "I'm 65, Stephanie, not 90. I don't need a senior community." Her expression shifted, just for a second. Something hard flashed in her eyes before the sweet smile returned. "Of course not. I just meant, eventually. It's good to plan ahead." 2 weeks ago, I came home from grocery shopping to find Stephanie coming out of my bedroom. Again. She had a measuring tape in her hand. "Oh, Susan, you're back early." She held up the tape like it explained everything. "I was just thinking about window treatments. These curtains are so dated. I thought I'd measure, maybe surprise you with something fresh for your retirement." My bedroom. She'd been in my bedroom, measuring my windows, without asking. "That's not necessary. I insist. You've done so much for us. Let me do this for you." She kissed my cheek on her way out. Her perfume was overpowering, expensive, the kind that announces you've arrived before you enter a room. After she left, I checked my jewelry box. Everything was there, but it felt violated anyway. Knowing her hands had been in my space, touching my things. I should have said something to Brian. But what would I say? "Your wife is being too helpful? She wants to buy me curtains?" It sounded paranoid. And Brian was happy. After his father died, I'd watched him grieve hard. Stephanie had been there for him. I had to give her that. She'd organized the funeral, dealt with the relatives, made sure Brian ate and slept. I was grateful then. Maybe I still wanted to be grateful. Maybe I didn't want to see what was right in front of me. Saturday morning, I woke up with that familiar knot in my stomach that appeared whenever I had to spend extended time with Stephanie. I told myself I was being unfair. This was my retirement dinner. 40 years of nursing, of night shifts and double shifts, of holding hands with dying patients and celebrating with new mothers. This should be a happy day. I chose a simple black dress, the one Robert always said made me look elegant. I put on the pearl earrings he gave me for our 20th anniversary. But I left the sapphire brooch in its box. Something told me not to wear it around Stephanie. Brian called at 3. "Mom, just confirming. 6 o'clock. We'll meet you there." "I'll be there." "And Mom?" Stephanie worked really hard planning this. "Try to appreciate it, okay? She really wants this to be special for you." The implication hung there. Don't ruin this by being difficult. "I'm sure it will be lovely." After he hung up, I sat in Robert's chair, the recliner he'd spent his last weeks in, and I let myself cry. Not for retirement, not for turning 65, but for the simple, terrible loneliness of having a son who no longer believed in me the way he once did. I arrived at Giovanni's at 5:45. It was an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with cloth napkins and wine lists that required a sommelier to navigate. Not my usual style, but Stephanie had insisted. "You only retire once," she'd said. The hostess led me to a private dining room in the back. Inside, a long table was set for 20 people. Flowers, candles, place cards with elegant calligraphy. Stephanie had outdone herself. Brian and Stephanie arrived at 6 sharp. She was wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my mortgage payment, her blonde hair swept up, diamonds at her throat. Brian wore a suit. They looked like people going to a business dinner, not a family celebration. "Mom," Brian hugged me. He smelled like his father's cologne. It made my chest ache. "You look nice." "This is beautiful," I said, gesturing at the room. "Thank you." Stephanie air-kissed both my cheeks. Only the best for my favorite mother-in-law. She laughed like it was a joke, even though I was her only mother-in-law. The guests arrived in clusters. I recognized 2 of Brian's colleagues from his accounting firm, but the rest were strangers, couples in their 30s and 40s, polished and professional. Stephanie's friends, I realized. Not mine. Where were my colleagues? The nurses I'd worked with for decades? My friend Martha from book club? "I kept the guest list intimate," Stephanie said, reading my face. Brian thought it would be overwhelming to have too many people. Intimate. 20 strangers instead of the people who actually knew me. We sat for dinner. I was placed at the head of the table with Brian on my right and Stephanie on my left. The conversations flowed around me, about people I didn't know, places I'd never been, inside jokes I wasn't part of. Stephanie dominated the table, telling stories about their recent trip to Cabo, their plans to renovate their kitchen, a charity gala she was organizing. She was magnetic, charming. Everyone loved her. And every few minutes, she'd turn to me with that smile. "Susan was just saying she's thinking about downsizing. Aren't you, Susan? Susan's been so tired lately. Haven't you, Susan?" Susan had a little confusion with her medications last week. We're helping her keep track of things now. Each comment delivered with concern, with love. But I felt myself shrinking at that table, becoming smaller with each word. The capable nurse, the strong woman who'd raised a son and cared for dying patients and survived her husband's death, was being erased, replaced with this confused, helpless old woman that Stephanie was creating with her words. Brian didn't correct her. He nodded along, sometimes adding his own observations about my difficult transition into retirement. The waiters brought champagne for the toast. Stephanie stood, glass in hand, and everyone quieted. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate Susan." She smiled down at me. 40 years of nursing is remarkable. Susan has dedicated her life to caring for others, and now it's time for her to rest, to let other people take care of her for a change. The way she said it, like I was already incapable, like retirement meant becoming an invalid. She raised her glass. "To Susan, may this next chapter bring peace and security." Everyone raised their glasses. I reached for mine. That's when the young waiter, the one who'd been refilling water glasses, leaned down as he passed behind my chair. His voice was barely a whisper, so quiet I almost missed it. "Don't drink. I saw her tampering with your glass." My hand froze halfway to the champagne flute. The waiter was already moving away, heading toward the kitchen. I looked up at Stephanie. She was watching me, her glass still raised, waiting for me to drink. Our eyes met. For just a second, her mask slipped. I saw something cold and calculated there, something that had been there all along, hidden behind the daughter-in-law smile. I lifted my glass to my lips but didn't drink, didn't let the liquid touch my mouth. Stephanie's eyes narrowed slightly, then she turned away, taking a sip of her own champagne. "Speech, Mom," Brian said. "Say a few words." I set my glass down carefully. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it, but I smiled. "Thank you all for coming. This is very generous." I picked up my glass again, held it. Stephanie was watching me from the corner of her eye while talking to the woman next to her. What had the waiter seen? What had she put in my drink? And more terrifying, what came next? What was supposed to happen after I drank whatever she'd put in that glass? I held the champagne flute like it was full of poison. Because maybe it was. Dinner continued around me like nothing had happened. The champagne sat untouched in my hand while conversations flowed about vacation homes and stock portfolios. I smiled when appropriate, nodded along, but my entire focus was on the glass I was holding and the woman sitting to my left. Stephanie was talking to the couple across from us about their anniversary trip to Tuscany. Her laugh rang out, bright and musical. She touched the woman's hand in that way she had, making instant connections. But every few seconds, her eyes would flick toward my champagne glass. I needed to think. 40 years as an emergency room nurse had taught me to stay calm in crisis, to assess and act without panic. What did I know? The waiter had seen her tampering with my glass. That was fact. Stephanie had been systematically painting me as confused and incompetent for months. That was fact. She'd been measuring my bedroom, asking about my house, suggesting senior communities. That was fact. And now, at a dinner she'd planned without inviting any of my actual friends, she'd put something in my drink. The question was what, and why tonight? "Susan?" Stephanie's voice cut through my thoughts. "You haven't touched your champagne. Don't you like it? I specifically requested the Veuve Clicquot. I know it's your favorite." I'd never told her my favorite champagne. I rarely drank champagne at all. "I'm savoring the moment," I said, still holding the glass. "It's not every day you retire." "Of course." Her smile was perfect, but her fingers drummed once on the table. Impatience. "Just don't let it get warm." Brian leaned over. "Mom, you okay? You seem quiet." "Just taking it all in," I said. "This is very generous of you both." "Stephanie did all the planning," he said, his hand covering hers on the table. "I wanted to do something at the house, but she insisted on Giovanni's." The main courses arrived. Pasta, chicken, fish. The smells made my stomach turn. I pushed food around my plate while Stephanie held court, telling a story about a charity auction where she'd outbid someone for a weekend in Napa. "The woman was so upset," Stephanie said, laughing. "But honestly, if you want something badly enough, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to get it." Her eyes met mine briefly. The message was clear. I excused myself to the restroom, taking my purse but leaving the champagne glass exactly where it was. I needed a moment to think without her watching every move. The bathroom was empty, all marble and soft lighting. I locked myself in a stall and pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Who could I call? Who would believe me? Martha, my friend from book club. We'd worked together at Mercy Hospital for 15 years before she retired last year. I texted her, "At retirement dinner. Something's wrong. If you don't hear from me by tomorrow morning, call me." Her response came immediately. "What's going on?" "We'll explain later. Just please remember this text." I opened my phone's voice memo app and started recording. It's Saturday, November 18th, 6:47 p.m. I'm at Giovanni's restaurant for my retirement dinner. A waiter warned me that my daughter-in-law Stephanie tampered with my champagne glass. I haven't drunk any of it. I'm making this recording as documentation. I stopped recording and saved it. Then I flushed the toilet for effect and washed my hands, studying my reflection. I looked pale but composed. I'd dealt with violent patients, with grieving families, with doctors who screamed during emergencies. I could handle Stephanie. When I returned to the dining room, Stephanie's eyes went immediately to my hands, checking if I'd taken the glass with me. "Feel better?" she asked. "Much." I sat down and picked up my water instead. The waiter who'd warned me was clearing plates from the other end of the table. He was young, maybe 25, with dark hair and nervous energy. When he reached our end, I caught his eye. He gave the slightest nod toward the kitchen. "I think I'd like coffee," I said. Stephanie's hand shot out. "Susan, are you sure? You've barely touched your champagne." "I don't drink when I'm driving." The disappointment on her face lasted only a second before the smile returned. But I saw it. And she knew I saw it. The waiter brought coffee. As he poured mine, he leaned down slightly. "Kitchen. 5 minutes. Tell them you want to thank the chef." Stephanie was deep in conversation with Brian about a property they were considering. I waited until her attention was fully engaged, then stood. "Where are you going?" Brian asked. "I want to thank the chef. The meal was wonderful." "Mom, you barely ate anything." "I'm nervous about making a speech, but I should still thank them." Stephanie's eyes narrowed. "I can pass along your compliments. I'd like to do it myself." I walked toward the kitchen before she could object. The kitchen was chaos. Chefs calling orders, pans clanging, heat pouring from ovens. The young waiter was waiting by the door. "This way." He led me to a quiet corner. "I'm Tyler. I'm sorry for being dramatic, but I didn't know what else to do." "What did you see?" "I was setting up the champagne glasses before service. Your daughter-in-law came in early, said she wanted to make sure everything was perfect. She asked which glass was yours." My chest tightened. "And?" "I went to get more napkins. When I came back, she was standing over your glass. She had something in her hand, small, like a pill. She looked around, didn't see me, and dropped it in. Then she stirred it with her finger and walked out." "Did anyone else see?" "I don't think so. It happened fast." He looked miserable. I almost didn't say anything, but the way she looked around first, like she was checking if anyone was watching. "Thank you for telling me. Do you have security cameras?" "Maybe. The manager would know. Mr. Carlucci. Can you get him for me?" Tyler disappeared. I stood there surrounded by the sounds of dinner service, my mind racing. If there were cameras, if they'd caught Stephanie tampering with the glass, I'd have proof. Mr. Carlucci appeared, a short man with gray hair and concerned eyes. "Mrs. Morrison, Tyler said there's a problem. I need to know if you have security cameras in the private dining room." His face shifted. "Is something wrong?" "Something was put in my drink without my consent. I need to see if your cameras caught it." He paled. "Yes, we have cameras. For insurance purposes. Follow me." His office was tiny, crammed with papers. He pulled up security footage on an old computer. The image was grainy but clear enough. There, Stephanie entering the empty dining room at 5:30, half an hour before the party started, walking around the table, stopping at the head, looking around, reaching into her purse. "Can you zoom in?" He clicked. Stephanie's hand emerged holding something small and white. She held it over the champagne glass, dropped it in, watched it dissolve. Then she stirred the liquid with her finger, wiped her finger on a napkin, and walked out. The timestamp showed 5:33 p.m. "Can you make me a copy of this?" "Signora, I really should call the police." "I will, I promise. But right now, she's in that dining room with my son and 20 other people. I need to handle this carefully. Please." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll put it on a USB drive." While he worked, I called Martha. "Susan? What's going on?" "I need you to come to Giovanni's restaurant downtown. Don't come inside. Just wait in the parking lot." "What's happening?" "I'll explain everything. Just please come." Mr. Carlucci handed me the USB drive. "Be careful." I walked back toward the dining room, the drive heavy in my pocket. Stephanie looked up as I entered, her face tight with frustration. I'd been gone almost 15 minutes. "There you are," she said. We were starting to worry. The chef and I got talking. I sat down and reached for my champagne glass. Stephanie's entire body tensed. "I think I'm ready for that toast now," I said, raising the glass. Every eye at the table turned to watch me. Stephanie's face was a mask of anticipation. I brought the glass to my lips, and then I looked directly at Stephanie and set it back down. "Actually, I've changed my mind. I'll stick with coffee." The disappointment on her face lasted only a second, but I saw it. and she knew I saw it. The evening dragged on. Dessert, more coffee, people starting to leave. Brian kept checking his watch. Stephanie's leg bounced under the table. Finally, the last guests departed. Just Brian, Stephanie, and me remained. "That was lovely," I said, standing. "Thank you both." "We need to talk to you about something," Stephanie said. "Brian and I have been meaning to bring this up." There it was. "What is it?" Brian shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, we're worried about you, living alone in that big house. Stephanie and I think it's time to consider some changes." "What kind of changes?" Stephanie's hand covered mine on the table. "We want you to move in with us. We've already cleared out the guest room. You'd have your own space, but we'd be there to help with everything. Medications, appointments, finances." "I'm not worried about anything." "But you should be," Stephanie said. "You're 65 now. You can't keep pretending you don't need help. Tonight you got confused about where the bathroom was. Last week you forgot our dinner plans. These little signs add up." "I didn't forget. We never made plans. See? This is exactly what we're talking about. You don't remember." She squeezed my hand. "It's okay to admit you need help." Brian pulled out papers from his jacket. We had some documents drawn up. Basic power of attorney, giving us the ability to help manage things. "All you need to do is sign." I looked at the papers. At my son holding them out, at my daughter-in-law with her perfect smile and cold eyes. This was it. This was what everything had been building toward. If I'd drunk the champagne, would I have been too sedated to understand what I was signing? "I'm not signing anything tonight," I said. Stephanie's grip tightened. "Susan, be reasonable." "I am. I'm a 65-year-old woman who just retired after 40 years of saving lives. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Are you?" Stephanie's voice turned sharp. "Because you seem confused and defensive. Classic signs of cognitive decline." I pulled my hand away and stood. "I'm going home now." "Mom." Brian stood too. "Please. We're trying to help you." I looked at my son. When had he stopped being the boy who believed in me? "Brian, have you ever asked yourself why Stephanie is so concerned about my well-being? Why she's the only one who notices these supposed memory problems?" "Because I pay attention," Stephanie said. "Because I care. Or because you're lying." The word hung in the air. Brian's face went white. Stephanie's eyes flashed. "That's a terrible thing to say," she whispered. "Is it? Then explain why you put something in my champagne glass tonight." Brian laughed uncomfortably. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Ask her. Ask your wife what she dropped into my drink 30 minutes before the party started." Stephanie's face remained composed. "I have no idea what you mean. Susan, this paranoia is exactly what we've been worried about." I pulled the USB drive from my purse and held it up. "Security footage. You tampering with my glass." For the first time all evening, Stephanie's mask cracked. "Let me see that," Brian said. Stephanie grabbed his arm. "Brian, no, she's clearly confused. There's no footage because I didn't do anything." "Then you won't mind if we look at it," I said. The room was silent except for distant kitchen sounds. Brian looked between his wife and his mother. "I think we should go home," Stephanie said carefully. "Get some rest. Talk in the morning." "I think we should call the police," I said. "Let them look at the footage. Let them test what's in my champagne glass." Stephanie's jaw clenched. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said softly. "I'm correcting one." The silence in that private dining room felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Brian looked at the USB drive in my hand, then at Stephanie, then back at me. His face had gone pale, and I watched him try to process what was happening. "Mom," he said slowly, "you're saying Stephanie put something in your drink?" "I'm saying a waiter saw her do it. I'm saying there's video footage. I'm saying I didn't drink it because I was warned." Stephanie laughed, but it came out wrong. Too high, too forced. "This is insane. Brian, your mother is having some kind of breakdown. Can't you see that?" "Show me the drive," Brian said to me. "Brian, don't encourage this," Stephanie snapped. "She probably doesn't even have footage. She's making this up to avoid the conversation we need to have about her care." But something had shifted in Brian's face. Maybe it was the way Stephanie's voice had gone sharp. Maybe it was the desperation in her eyes. Whatever it was, he'd finally started questioning. "If there's nothing on it, then there's no problem," he said. "Show me, Mom." I handed him the drive. He looked around the empty dining room. "We need a computer." Mr. Carlucci appeared in the doorway as if he'd been waiting. "You can use my office." We walked through the kitchen in silence. Stephanie's heels clicked against the tile floor with staccato urgency. In the tiny office, Mr. Carlucci plugged the drive into his computer and stepped back. Brian leaned forward. I watched his face as the footage played. Stephanie entering the room. checking the place cards, stopping at my seat, looking around, the hand reaching into her purse, the small white object, the drop into the champagne, the finger stirring, the casual wipe on the napkin, the timestamp, 5:33 p.m. Brian played it again and again. "Brian," Stephanie started. "Don't." His voice came out strangled. "Don't say anything right now. It's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" He turned to face her. "What did you put in my mother's drink?" "It was just something to help her relax. She's been so stressed about retirement and I thought..." "You thought you'd drug her?" Brian's voice rose. "Without her knowledge? Without her consent?" "I was trying to help. The papers, the power of attorney, they're for her own good. But she's been so resistant. So stubborn. I thought if she was just a little calmer, she could see we're trying to protect her." I watched my son's face as he listened to his wife explain why drugging me was reasonable. His expression moved through confusion, disbelief, and finally settled on something that looked like horror. "What was it?" I asked quietly. "What did you put in my drink?" Stephanie's mouth opened and closed. She looked trapped. "Answer her," Brian said. "Lorazepam, just 2 milligrams. It's barely anything." Lorazepam, I repeated the word carefully, "an anti-anxiety medication, which, combined with alcohol, can cause severe sedation, impaired judgment, and memory problems." I researched it. The dose was safe. Safe. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You researched how to drug me. That's not how I'd phrase it." "How would you phrase it, Stephanie? What exactly was supposed to happen after I drank that champagne?" She looked at Brian, but he'd turned away from her. When she spoke, her voice had lost its warmth. It was flat, businesslike. "You were supposed to relax. We were going to talk about your living situation, about the house being too much for you. You were going to be agreeable, less defensive. You were going to sign the power of attorney papers so Brian and I could help manage your affairs." "Manage my affairs." The words tasted bitter. "You mean access my accounts, control my money." "Your money?" Stephanie's composure cracked further. "Robert's money, you mean? Money that should have gone to his son, not just to you." "Stephanie," Brian said sharply, but she couldn't stop now. "Do you know how much she has, Brian? Almost $2 million. The house, the investments, the life insurance, the retirement accounts. She's sitting on a fortune while we're drowning in debt." I felt like I'd been slapped. "What debt?" Brian's shoulders slumped. "Mom? What debt?" I repeated, looking at my son. "Credit cards," he said quietly. "The business expansion that failed, the house renovation, Stephanie's car. We owe about $300,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. $300,000. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because you'd just lost Dad," Brian said. "I didn't want to burden you. So you let her come up with this instead?" I gestured at the computer screen, still showing Stephanie's betrayal on repeat. "I didn't know about this part," Brian said, his voice breaking. "I swear to God, Mom, I didn't know she was going to drug you. But you knew about the rest. The power of attorney. The plan to convince me I needed help managing my money." He couldn't meet my eyes. "She said you were showing signs of confusion. She said you needed protection from yourself. She made it sound like we were doing the right thing, and you believed her. She's my wife. I'm your mother." The words fell between us like stones into water, sending ripples neither of us knew how to navigate. Stephanie pulled out her phone. "I'm calling our lawyer." "You mean the lawyer who drew up those power of attorney papers?" But I took the champagne glass from my purse, wrapped carefully in a napkin I'd taken from the table. "The ones you planned to have me sign while I was drugged? I don't think your lawyer is going to be much help once the police test what's in this glass." Her hand froze. "You kept it. I'm a nurse, Stephanie. I've seen what happens when people's drinks get tampered with. I know how to preserve evidence." She looked at Brian. "Are you going to let her do this? Call the police on your wife?" Brian stared at her like he'd never seen her before. "Did you really think this would work? That you could drug my mother and steal from her?" "I wasn't stealing. I was securing our future. Your future. By destroying my relationship with my mother. By drugging her." His voice cracked. "Who are you?" "I'm the woman who's been holding this marriage together while you worked 16-hour days trying to save a failing business. I'm the woman who's been managing our debt, dealing with creditors, keeping us from losing everything. I'm the woman who's been doing whatever it takes. Whatever it takes," I said softly, "including destroying an old woman's reputation, making her own son doubt her, drugging her at her own retirement party." Stephanie's eyes flashed. "You're not some helpless old woman, Susan. Stop playing victim. You have more money than you could spend in 2 lifetimes. We needed it. We deserved it." "Why?" I asked. Why did you deserve it? Because we're young. Because we have our whole lives ahead of us. Because you've already lived yours. The cruelty of it was breathtaking in its simplicity. I was old, therefore less deserving. I'd already lived, therefore my future didn't matter. Robert worked 45 years for that money, I said. He worked himself to death so I'd be secure. So I wouldn't have to worry. Well, he's dead now. And you're alive. And that money is just sitting there. Brian made a sound like he'd been punched. Stop talking. Just stop. But Stephanie was past caring. The mask had shattered completely and all the resentment poured out. You think I wanted it to be like this? I tried everything else. I tried being the perfect daughter-in-law. I tried suggesting things gently. I tried making you see reason. But you wouldn't budge. You wouldn't even consider that maybe you didn't need all of it. So yes, I got creative. You got criminal, I corrected. You forged a relationship with my son based on lies. You isolated me from him. You tried to drug me. Those aren't creative solutions, Stephanie. They're crimes. She straightened her shoulders. Prove it. Prove I knew what was in that pill. Prove I meant to hurt you. It'll be your word against mine. And everyone at that party saw how confused you were. How defensive. Who do you think they'll believe? They'll believe the security footage, Mr. Carlucci said from the doorway. And they'll believe the waiter who saw you. And they'll believe the toxicology report from the champagne. Stephanie's face went white. I'm calling the police now, Mr. Carlucci continued. What you did in my restaurant could destroy my business. I won't let that happen. He walked out. We could hear him in the hallway, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the phone. Stephanie looked at Brian. Are you really going to let this happen? I'm your wife. You drugged my mother. To help us. To help you. No. Brian's voice was firm now. You did this for yourself, and you made me complicit. You made me doubt my own mother. You made me believe she was failing when she wasn't. He turned to me. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have questioned what she was telling me. I wanted to comfort him, but I couldn't. Not yet. The hurt was too fresh, too raw. Why didn't you? I asked. Why didn't you question it? Because I was drowning. The business, the debt, everything falling apart. And Stephanie kept saying we just needed a little help. That you had more than enough. That it was reasonable for family to support each other. He pressed his palms against his eyes. I wanted to believe her because the alternative was facing that I'd failed. That I'd made bad decisions. That I couldn't fix it myself. So you decided to fix it with my money. I thought it was a loan. Stephanie said we'd pay you back. She said you'd be taken care of. You'd have everything you needed. We'd just be managing the extra. The extra, I repeated. My entire life savings is extra? He had no answer for that. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Stephanie grabbed her purse. I need to leave. You're not going anywhere, Brian said, stepping in front of the door. Move, Brian. No. She tried to push past him, but he held firm. For a moment they struggled, and I saw the future they would have had together. Years of this. Fighting over money, over control, over who was right and who was wrong. The police arrived with Mr. Carlucci, 2 officers, a man and a woman, both looking tired at the end of their shift. Who called about drugging? The male officer asked. I did, Mr. Carlucci said. This woman, he pointed at Stephanie, put something in this woman's drink without her knowledge. He pointed at me. The female officer looked at me. Ma'am, is this true? Yes, I have the glass, wrapped in a napkin. I have security footage of her doing it, and I have a witness, one of the waiters. I want my lawyer, Stephanie said. That's your right, the officer replied. But first, we're going to need everyone to come down to the station for statements. They took Stephanie out in handcuffs, not because she was under arrest yet, the officer explained, but because she'd tried to leave the scene. Brian followed, his face gray with shock. I rode in Mr. Carlucci's car, the champagne glass carefully secured in an evidence bag the police had provided. Martha called while we drove. Susan, are you okay? I've been waiting in the parking lot for an hour. I'm fine. I'll explain later. Thank you for coming. What's happening? Justice, I said. I think justice is finally happening. At the police station, I gave my statement. Described the months of subtle manipulation, the comments about my confusion, the suggestions about senior living, the measuring tape in my bedroom, the dinner party with strangers instead of friends, the waiter's warning, the security footage. They tested the champagne, confirmed lorazepam, dissolved but still detectable. They interviewed Tyler, the waiter. He described exactly what he'd seen. They watched the security footage. At 3 in the morning, they charged Stephanie with attempted poisoning and conspiracy to commit fraud. Brian sat in the waiting area, his head in his hands. When I came out, he stood. They're keeping her overnight. Arraignment is Monday morning. I nodded. Mom, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. Not yet. Can I drive you home? I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, who I'd loved unconditionally, who had chosen to believe his wife's lies over his mother's truth. No, I said quietly. Martha's picking me up. Mom, please. Brian, you helped your wife plan to drug me and steal my money. That doesn't go away with an apology. It doesn't get fixed in one night. I didn't know about the drugging part, but you knew about the rest. You knew she wanted my power of attorney. You knew she thought I was incompetent. You knew she wanted to control my money, and you went along with it. His face crumpled. I was desperate. So you sacrificed me. The words hung between us, undeniable and true. Martha arrived, her eyes wide with worry. She hugged me tight. Let's go home, she said. I walked out of the police station into the cold November night. Brian called after me, but I didn't turn around. In Martha's car, she asked gently, "What happened?" My daughter-in-law tried to drug me at my retirement party so she could steal my money. My son was part of the plan. Martha's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Oh, Susan, I'm 65 years old. I just retired after 40 years of nursing, and my own family tried to destroy me. The tears came then, finally. Not quiet tears, but wrenching sobs that shook my whole body. Martha pulled over and held me while I cried for the family I thought I had and the future I'd thought we'd share. When I finally stopped, exhausted and empty, she asked, "What are you going to do?" I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I can't go back to pretending everything's fine. She drove me home. The house was dark and silent, just as I'd left it. Robert's chair sat empty in the living room. The sapphire brooch gleamed in its box on my dresser. I sat in the darkness and felt the full weight of my loneliness. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Robert's chair watching the sunrise paint the living room walls gold, thinking about everything I'd lost and everything I'd learned. Martha had stayed until 2 in the morning, making tea I didn't drink and asking questions I couldn't answer. What would I do about Brian? Would I press charges? Did I want to talk to a lawyer? I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't be the same person I was yesterday. That Susan, the one who stayed quiet and gave people the benefit of the doubt, who let Stephanie walk into her bedroom with a measuring tape, that Susan had nearly been destroyed. Sunday morning, Brian called 17 times. I didn't answer. By noon, he was at my door, pressing the bell over and over. I opened it but left the chain on. What do you want? He looked terrible. Unshaven, clothes wrinkled, eyes red. Can I come in, please? No. Mom, we need to talk. I gave my statement to the police. I have nothing more to say to you. She's my wife. They're saying she could get 5 years. She tried to drug me, Brian. She planned it. She researched it. She executed it. What did you think would happen? I thought you'd understand that she was desperate. That we were desperate. I stared at him through the gap in the door. I understand that when you were desperate, instead of asking your mother for help, you decided to take it. There's a difference. I'm asking now. I'm asking you not to press charges, to let the lawyers work something out. So she can do this to someone else? She won't. She's learned her lesson. Has she? Or has she just learned not to get caught? Brian's face hardened. You're really going to destroy our lives over this? I didn't destroy anything, Brian. Stephanie did. And you helped her. I'm your son. Then act like it. I closed the door. He pounded on it for another 5 minutes before finally leaving. I watched from the window as he sat in his car in my driveway, head on the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to go to him. The mother part. The part that had rocked him through nightmares and celebrated every milestone. But I couldn't. Not yet. Monday morning, I called my lawyer. Not the family lawyer that Robert had used, but someone new, someone Stephanie wouldn't know about. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she came highly recommended by Martha. Her office was downtown, modern and efficient. She was maybe 50, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen. What do you want to happen? I want to make sure this never happens again, to me or anyone else. The criminal charges will help with that. But I'm talking about your family, your assets, your protection. I want to change my will. I want to set up protections so no one can do this again. I want to make sure if something happens to me, if I really do become incapable someday, the right people are in charge. Not Brian? I thought about my son sitting in his car, asking me to let his wife off the hook. No, not Brian. Over the next week, Patricia helped me restructure everything. New will, new power of attorney documents, a living trust. I named Martha as my healthcare proxy and Patricia as the trustee of my estate. Brian was removed from all decision-making authority. This will hurt him, Patricia warned, when he finds out. Not as much as being drugged at my own retirement party hurt me. I also did something I should have done months ago. I started documenting everything. Every time Stephanie had suggested I was confused, every comment about downsizing, every uninvited visit. I wrote it all down, dated it, and gave copies to Patricia. This is a pattern of manipulation, Patricia said, reading through my notes. She was building a case for incompetency before the drugging. If you'd drunk that champagne and signed those papers, she would have had documentation to back up her claims that you weren't capable of managing your affairs. How long do you think she'd been planning this? Months? Maybe since your husband died and she saw how much the estate was worth. The thought made me physically ill. 2 years of grief, and Stephanie had spent them calculating how to take what Robert had left me. Stephanie's arraignment was on Wednesday. I didn't go, but Martha did. She called me from the courthouse. She pleaded not guilty. Her lawyer argued that she was trying to help you, that she had concerns about your mental state, that the lorazepam was prescribed to her, and she thought it would help you relax. Did they set bail? $50,000. Brian posted it. With what money? I don't know. Maybe he has family he can borrow from? More likely, he'd maxed out another credit card. The thought gave me no pleasure. That afternoon, Tyler, the waiter who'd warned me, came to my house. He looked nervous, holding a baseball cap in his hands. Mrs. Morrison? I hope it's okay that I came. Mr. Carlucci gave me your address. Of course, come in. He sat on the edge of my couch like he might need to run. I wanted to check if you were okay, and to say I'm sorry I didn't do more. I should have stopped her right there in the dining room. You did more than you know. You saved me. The police talked to me. They said I might have to testify. Are you willing to? He nodded. What she did was wrong. I've been working at Giovanni's for 2 years to pay for college. I've seen a lot of family dinners. I know what it looks like when people care about each other. That wasn't it. What did it look like? It looked like someone planning something bad. The way she checked to make sure no one was watching. The way she smiled after she did it. He shuddered. It was cold. After he left, I realized something. Tyler was 23 years old, working his way through school, barely making rent, and he'd risked his job to warn a stranger that she was in danger. Meanwhile, my own son, who I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, had been planning to drug me for money. Thursday, Patricia called. The prosecutor wants to meet with you. They're building their case and need your cooperation. The prosecutor's office was in the county building, fluorescent lights and government furniture. Assistant District Attorney James Rodriguez was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes that suggested he'd seen too much. Mrs. Morrison, thank you for coming. I've reviewed your case, and I want to be direct with you. What your daughter-in-law did was serious, but cases like this are hard to prosecute. My stomach dropped. Why? Because she'll argue she was trying to help you. She'll say she was concerned about your mental state, that the lorazepam was meant to calm you down so you could have a rational conversation about your care. She'll paint herself as a caring daughter-in-law who made a mistake in judgment. She researched how to drug me. She dropped it in my drink when no one was watching. She waited for me to drink it so she could have me sign legal documents. That's not care. That's conspiracy. I agree, but we need to prove intent. We need to show that she meant to harm you, not help you. What do you need from me? Everything. Every interaction. Every comment. Every time she made you feel diminished or confused. I need to establish a pattern of manipulation that shows this wasn't about care. It was about control. I pulled out the folder Patricia and I had prepared. I documented everything. Rodriguez's eyes lit up as he read through my notes. This is excellent. This shows premeditation. This shows she was building a narrative of incompetency. What are the chances she goes to prison? With this evidence? Good. But Mrs. Morrison, I need to tell you something. Your son is going to be called as a witness. We'll need to know what he knew and when he knew it. He didn't know about the drugging, but he knew about the rest. That makes him an accessory to attempted fraud. He could face charges too. The room seemed to tilt. What? If he knew she was planning to manipulate you into signing over power of attorney, if he helped prepare those documents, If he participated in any way, he's legally liable. But he's my son. I understand. But the law doesn't make exceptions for family. Actually, it's often harder on family because of the violation of trust. I sat there trying to process this. Stephanie going to prison was one thing. Brian facing charges was another. What if I don't cooperate? What if I drop the charges? Against Stephanie, you can. Against your son, you can. But the state is pursuing this now. We have the security footage. We have the waiter's testimony. We have the champagne with lorazepam in it. This isn't just about what happened to you anymore. It's about what could have happened. What might happen to the next person if we don't stop her. He was right. I knew he was right, but knowing it didn't make it easier. That evening, Martha came over with dinner. Real food, not the toast and tea I'd been surviving on. You need to eat, she said, setting containers on the counter. You've lost weight. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. You can't fall apart now. I picked at the pasta she'd brought. The prosecutor says Brian could face charges. Martha sat down across from me. What do you want to happen? I don't know. Part of me wants him punished. Part of me wants to protect him. Part of me wants to understand how my son became someone I don't recognize. He made choices, Susan. Bad choices. But they were his choices. I keep thinking about when he was little. He used to bring me flowers from the neighbor's garden. He'd steal them, these big tulips, and give them to me like they were the most precious thing in the world. He was so proud. He's not that little boy anymore. No, but I'm still his mother. And I don't know how to stop being his mother just because he hurt me. Martha reached across the table and took my hand. You don't have to stop being his mother, but you do have to protect yourself. Even from him. Especially from him. Friday morning, I did something I'd been putting off. I went to see Brian. He answered the door looking worse than the last time. Mom, can I come in? He stepped aside. The house was a mess. Dishes in the sink, mail piled on the counter, everything coated in a thin layer of neglect. Where's Stephanie? At her mother's. The bail conditions say she can't contact you, but they didn't say she had to stay here. We sat in the living room. The silence between us was heavy, full of things neither of us knew how to say. The prosecutor says you might face charges, I said finally. His face went white. What? You knew about the power of attorney. You helped plan it. That makes you an accessory. Mom, I didn't know she was going to drug you. But you knew she wanted to take control of my money. You knew she was manipulating me. You were part of it, Brian. I thought we were helping you. I thought, stop. I held up my hand. Stop saying you thought you were helping. You weren't. You were helping yourself. To my money. To my house. To my security. We were desperate. Then you should have asked me for help. You should have told me about the debt. You should have trusted that I love you enough to help you without stealing from me. I was ashamed. I didn't want you to know I'd failed. So instead, you let Stephanie convince you I was failing. You let her paint me as confused and incompetent. You let her measure my bedroom and plan my future. And you went along with it because it was easier than facing your own mistakes. He started crying. Big, gasping sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm sorry. I watched him cry and felt nothing. Not anger, not sympathy. Just emptiness. Brian, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. Did you ever love me? Or was I just a resource to you? His head snapped up. How can you ask me that? Because I don't know anymore. I don't know if I was your mother or your retirement plan. You're my mother. You've always been my mother. Then why wasn't that enough? Why did you need my money too? He had no answer. I stood to leave. The prosecutor is going to ask me if I want to press charges against you. I haven't decided yet. But Brian, whether I do or not, our relationship is over. You broke something that can't be fixed. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. You chose money over me. You chose Stephanie over me. You chose everything else over me. I'm just finally accepting it. Mom, please. I walked to the door. Get a lawyer, Brian. A good one. And start being honest. About the debt. About what you knew. About all of it. Because if you lie to protect Stephanie now, you'll lose everything. I left him there crying, and I felt nothing but relief to be out of that house. 3 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom watching my daughter-in-law face trial. The room was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Stephanie sat at the defense table in a modest dress, her hair pulled back, trying to look harmless. Brian sat on her side of the room. He'd looked at me once when I entered. I'd looked away. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. The security footage played on screens mounted around the courtroom. There was Stephanie, clear as day, dropping something into my champagne glass. The jury watched in silence. Tyler testified. He described exactly what he'd seen, how he'd warned me, how Stephanie had looked around to make sure no one was watching. The defense attorney tried to shake him on cross-examination, but Tyler held firm. She knew what she was doing was wrong, he said. That's why she checked if anyone was watching. Mr. Carlucci testified about the security system, about the footage being continuous and unedited. The forensic analyst testified about the lorazepam found in the champagne glass, about the concentration, about what it would have done when mixed with alcohol. The amount would have caused significant sedation, she said, impaired judgment, memory problems, difficulty making decisions. The effects would last several hours. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand feeling every one of my 65 years. The prosecutor, Rodriguez, smiled encouragingly. Mrs. Morrison, can you tell us about your relationship with the defendant? I looked at Stephanie. She held my gaze, her face blank. She married my son 5 years ago. At first, we got along fine, but after my husband died 2 years ago, things changed. How did they change? She started making comments about my mental state, suggesting I was confused, forgetful. She'd tell me we'd made plans that we hadn't. She'd mention incidents that never happened. She made me doubt myself. Can you give us specific examples? I pulled out my notes. Read through them one by one. Each comment, each manipulation, each time she'd planted seeds of incompetence. The jury listened, some taking notes. Why do you think she did this? Rodriguez asked. Because she wanted my money. And the easiest way to get it was to convince everyone, including my son, that I couldn't manage it myself. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. She was an older woman with kind eyes that didn't match her sharp questions. Mrs. Morrison, isn't it possible that Stephanie genuinely cared about you? That she saw signs of decline and wanted to help? If she cared about me, she wouldn't have drugged me. Perhaps she made a mistake in judgment. Perhaps she thought a mild sedative would help you relax enough to have a difficult conversation. A conversation about signing over control of my finances. A conversation about your care, about making sure you were safe. I didn't need that conversation. I was perfectly capable. Were you? You're 65 years old, recently retired, living alone after losing your husband. Many people in your situation do need help. Many people, maybe, not me. And Stephanie knew that. That's why she had to drug me. Because I wouldn't agree when I was in my right mind. The defense attorney tried several more angles, but I held firm. 40 years of dealing with aggressive doctors in emergency rooms had taught me how to stand my ground. When I stepped down, I felt lighter somehow. I'd told my truth. The rest was up to the jury. Brian testified next. The prosecutor called him, not the defense. He looked terrified. Mr. Morrison, what did you know about your wife's plans regarding your mother? Brian's voice shook. Stephanie said Mom was having memory problems. She said we needed to help her before something bad happened. Did you believe her? Yes, she showed me documentation. Photos, notes about things Mom had supposedly forgotten. Did you ever verify these claims with your mother? No. Why not? Because Stephanie was my wife. I trusted her. Did you know Stephanie planned to put lorazepam in your mother's drink? No, I swear I didn't know that. But you knew about the power of attorney documents? Brian's face crumpled. Yes. And what was the plan regarding those documents? We were going to talk to Mom at the retirement dinner, explain that we wanted to help manage her finances, ask her to sign. And if she refused? Long silence. Stephanie said she wouldn't refuse. She said Mom would see it was for the best, because she would be sedated. I didn't know that part. Rodriguez pressed harder. But you knew your mother didn't want to sign over power of attorney. She'd refused before, hadn't she? Yes. So how did Stephanie plan to get her to sign this time? Brian looked at Stephanie. She stared straight ahead. I don't know. She just said to trust her. After Brian finished, looking destroyed, the defense called Stephanie to the stand. This was what I'd been waiting for. To hear her version. To hear how she'd justify what she'd done. She looked poised, confident. The victim act was gone. This was the real Stephanie. Ms. Morrison, why did you put lorazepam in your mother-in-law's drink? Because I was worried about her. She'd been showing signs of decline, and I thought if she was calmer, less defensive, we could have an honest conversation about her care. Did you intend to harm her? Never. I love Susan. Everything I did was because I care about her. And the power of attorney documents? Those were for her protection, so Brian and I could help manage things if she became unable to. Rodriguez stood for cross-examination. Ms. Morrison, you say you care about Susan. Is that why you told people she was confused when she wasn't? I was documenting my concerns. You were building false evidence. Isn't that true? I was worried about her. Worried enough to research sedatives? Worried enough to drug her without consent? Worried enough to try to take control of $2 million? Stephanie's composure finally cracked. She doesn't need all that money. She's old. She's alone. What's she going to do with it? So you decided it should be yours? We needed it more than she did. Even if it meant drugging her? Even if it meant destroying her relationship with her son? Even if it meant making her doubt her own mind? I did what I had to do. There it was. The truth. Finally spoken out loud. She'd done what she had to do. Not for me. For herself. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood. On the charge of attempted poisoning, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Stephanie's face went white. Brian let out a sob. I felt nothing but a quiet sense of justice finally being served. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. Stephanie was remanded into custody immediately. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked at me one final time. "This is your fault," she said. "You could have just helped us." "No," I replied calmly. "This is your fault. You could have just asked." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I pushed through them without comment. Martha waited by her car. "How do you feel?" she asked as we drove away. Tired? Relieved? Sad? Sad? For Brian. For the son I thought I had. For the family I thought we were. "You did the right thing. I know, but it still hurts." That evening, Brian called. I answered this time. "Mom." His voice was hoarse. "She got 5 years. I heard. I filed for divorce today." "Good." Silence. Then, Can we try to fix this?" I looked around my living room. At Robert's chair. At the sapphire brooch in its box. At the life I'd built and nearly lost. "I don't know, Brian. Ask me in 5 years." I hung up before he could respond. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was possibility. And for now, that was enough. 6 months after the trial, I stood in my kitchen making coffee on a Saturday morning. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt peaceful. Martha arrived at 9 with pastries from the bakery downtown. We'd started this tradition after everything happened. Saturday mornings, coffee and conversation, rebuilding the friendship that Stephanie had tried to erode. "How was your week?" she asked, settling at the kitchen table. "Good." I started volunteering at the hospital. Just 2 days a week, helping in the emergency room waiting area, talking to families. It feels right. "That's wonderful, Susan." And I joined a book club, a different one, with people I actually choose to spend time with. I poured coffee into Robert's favorite mug, the one I'd avoided using for 2 years. It felt good to hold it again. Martha smiled. "You look different, lighter somehow." "I feel different. I feel like myself again." The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Tyler standing on my porch, looking nervous as always. "Tyler," I said, opening the door. "Come in." He'd visited a few times since the trial, always checking on me, always making sure I was okay. Today, he looked excited. "Mrs. Morrison, I wanted to tell you in person. I got accepted to medical school. Johns Hopkins." I hugged him without thinking. "Tyler, that's incredible. I couldn't have done it without you. The recommendation letter you wrote, it made all the difference." After he left, Martha raised her eyebrows. "You wrote him a recommendation? He saved my life. The least I could do was help him build his." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Martha asked the question she'd been holding back. "Have you heard from Brian?" "He calls every Sunday, leaves messages, apologizes. Tells me about his therapy sessions. Do you listen to them?" "Sometimes. Not always." "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" I thought about that. "I don't know. He made choices, bad choices. But he's trying to face them now. He sold the house, moved into an apartment. He's working to pay off the debt himself. He sends me letters. Do you read them?" "Everyone. I don't respond, but I read them." Martha squeezed my hand. "That's something." The following week, I did something I'd been planning for months. I drove to the women's correctional facility 2 hours north. Stephanie sat across from me in the visiting room, wearing prison orange, her hair pulled back without makeup. She looked older, harder. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Because I needed to see you, to understand." "Understand what?" "Why you hated me so much." She laughed bitterly. "I didn't hate you. I envied you. Envied me. You had everything. The perfect marriage, the devoted husband, the financial security. You had 40 years of love and stability. I had debt and a failing marriage and constant struggle to maintain appearances. So you tried to take what I had. I tried to take what you didn't need. You were alone, Susan. You didn't need all that money just to sit in that house remembering your dead husband. That wasn't your decision to make. No, it wasn't. She looked down at her hands. I'm not sorry about wanting the money, but I'm sorry about how I went about getting it. I'm sorry I tried to make you doubt yourself. That part was cruel. It wasn't much of an apology, but it was honest. More honest than anything she'd said before. Do you know what the worst part was? I asked. Not the drugging. Not even the manipulation. It was that you made my son doubt me. You poisoned our relationship. That's what I can't forgive. Brian made his own choices. You showed him how. We sat in silence until the guard announced visiting hours were over. As I stood to leave, Stephanie called after me. Susan, do you think Brian will wait for me? I looked at her, this woman who'd tried to destroy my life. He filed for divorce the day you were sentenced. It was final 3 months ago. Her face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw real grief there. Not for what she'd done to me, but for what she'd lost. I drove home feeling something lift from my chest. I'd needed to see her, to hear her admission, to close that chapter. Now I could move forward. That Sunday, Brian's call came at the usual time. For the first time in months, I answered. Mom? His voice cracked with surprise. You answered. I did. I don't know what to say. I've been calling for so long. Then just listen. I've read your letters. All of them. I know you're in therapy. I know you're working to pay off the debt. I know you're trying. I am. Mom, I'm trying so hard to be better. I believe you. But Brian, what you did, what you participated in, it broke something between us. I don't know if it can be fixed. Can we try, please? I thought about Robert, about how he'd always believed in second chances, how he'd believed people could change if they truly wanted to. We can try, but slowly and with boundaries. You don't get to know about my finances. You don't get a key to my house. You don't get unlimited access to my life. I understand. Whatever you need. What I need is to know that you love me for being your mother. Not for what I have. Not for what you think you're entitled to. Just for being me. I do. I always have. I just lost sight of it. But Mom, I never stopped loving you. Even when I was making terrible choices, I loved you. Then prove it. Be the man your father raised you to be. We talked for 20 minutes. It was careful, tentative, but it was real. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a year. Hope. 1 year after the trial, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner. Not a big production like before. Just Martha, Tyler home from medical school, a few nurses from the hospital, and Mr. Carlucci with his wife. And Brian. He'd arrived early, nervous, carrying wine and asking what he could do to help. I put him to work, chopping vegetables. We moved around each other carefully in the kitchen, finding a new rhythm. The turkey smells amazing, he said. Your father's recipe. I haven't made it since he died. Why now? Because I'm ready. Because I'm reclaiming things Stephanie tried to take from me. Joy, tradition, family. He set down the knife. Mom? Am I family? Still? I looked at my son. He'd lost weight, gained some gray hair. He looked tired but genuine. Changed. You're trying to be. That's enough for now. At dinner, we went around the table saying what we were grateful for. When it was my turn, I held up my water glass. I'm grateful for second chances, for people who warn strangers about danger, for friends who show up, for the courage to protect myself, and for the strength to keep my heart open even after it's been broken. Everyone raised their glasses, even Brian, tears streaming down his face. That night, after everyone left, I sat in Robert's chair with a sapphire brooch in my hands. I'd worn it today for the first time in 2 years. I did it, I told Robert's memory. I protected what you built. I protected myself. And I'm finally learning that being strong doesn't mean being alone. I put the brooch back in its box and looked around my living room. The same furniture, the same walls, but everything felt different. Lighter, mine again. My phone buzzed. A text from Brian. Thank you for today. Thank you for trying. I love you, Mom. I typed back, I love you too. See you next month. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't healed. But it was honest. And honesty, I'd learned, was worth more than anything else. I made myself tea and settled back in Robert's chair. Through the window, snow was starting to fall. The first snow of the season, covering everything in white, making the world new again. I was 66 years old. I was alone, but not lonely. I was hurt, but healing. I was changed, but not broken. And I was finally, completely, peacefully free. The champagne glass that had nearly destroyed me sat in an evidence box somewhere. But I didn't need evidence anymore. I knew who I was. I knew what I was worth. And I knew that no one, not even family, could take that from me again. I raised my teacup to the falling snow. To second chances, I whispered, and to knowing when to walk away. The snow kept falling, quiet and clean, covering all the old wounds with something new. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.